And welcome to Mastermind with me, John Humphrys. In the spotlight tonight are Giles Sparrow, a freelance writer whose specialist subject is the Gordon Riots of 1780. Max Lacey, a communications manager who'll be answering questions on the history of Marvel Comics. Krithika Varuga, a journalist whose subject is Franklin D. Roosevelt. And Kate Ritchie, a retired physician whose specialist subject is F.E. McWilliam. It is, as you will have noticed, a very short walk from their seats to the scary black chair waiting for them, but a very daunting one. And it's not just the chair they have to contend with, it's the glare of the spotlight and the knowledge that the clock is ticking. They get 2 minutes on their specialist subject, 2.5 on their general knowledge. So let's have our first contender, please. And your name is?
Giles Sparrow.
Your occupation?
Freelance writer.
And your chosen subject?
The Gordon Riots of 1780.
The anti-Catholic riots which broke out in London in 1780. Hundreds of people were killed. Here we go. The Gordon Riots were named after Lord George Gordon, the president of an organisation that campaigned for the repeal of the Catholic Relief Act of 1778. Which organisation?
Protestants Association?
Yes, the Leicester Square house of the MP who introduced the Catholic Relief Bill to Parliament was attacked by the mob. What was his name?
George Savile.
Yes. On which area of open land in Southwark did supporters of the Protestant Association gather on June the 2nd, 1780, before they presented their petition to Parliament?
St George's Fields.
Yes. Bishop John Hinchcliffe was cheered on his arrival at Parliament on June the 2nd because of his support for the repeal of the Catholic Relief Act. He was the bishop of which diocese?
Lincoln.
Peterborough. What colour cockade was worn as an emblem by many of the rioters and supporters of the Protestant Association?
Blue.
Yes. On the advice of the Attorney-General, the King issued a proclamation on June the 7th which permitted the military to fire on the mob without a magistrate first reading the Riot Act. Who was the Attorney-General?
Alexander Wedderburn.
Yes. When the mob stormed the Sardinian ambassador's chapel, he offered them 500 guineas not to destroy a painting of Christ. He also offered them 1,000 guineas to spare which other item?
The organ.
Yes. Who was the Lord Chief Justice whose personal library was destroyed when his house was burned down during the riots? He later presided over Gordon's trial.
Mansfield.
Yes. In his diary entry for June the 7th, John Wilkes recorded shooting several people in Pig Street and Cheapside, as well as 2 people opposite the gate of which building?
The Bank of England.
Yep. The Lord Mayor of London was accused of negligence for failing to act against the mob and is described in Charles Dickens' account of the riots in Barnaby Rudge as the faintest-hearted and most timid of them all. What was his name?
Brackley Kennett.
Yeah. Which caricaturist satirised the rioters in a cartoon entitled No Popery, or The Newgate Reformer, published on June the 9th? It included the verse, "Religion, he cries, in hopes to deceive, while his practice is only to burn and to thieve."
Gilray.
Yes, James Gilray. A jail was burned down by the mob after its keeper, Mr. Ackerman, refused to release rioters who were held there. Which jail?
Newgate.
Is correct. No passes, Giles. You've scored 11 points. And our next contender, please. And your name is?
Max Lacey.
Your occupation?
Communications manager.
And your specialist subject?
The history of Marvel Comics.
Comic book publisher, which has produced many of the most famous, recognisable superheroes and villains that we know today. Here we go. What was the name of the company that published Marvel Comics #1 in October 1939? The company had been founded by Martin Goodman and eventually became known as Marvel.
Timely Comics.
Yep. What is the full name of the fan club, commonly known by its initials MMMS, that was started by Stan Lee in the mid-1960s for fans of Marvel Comics?
Mighty Marvel Marching Society.
Merry Marvel Marching Society. Who succeeded Stan Lee as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics in 1972 when Lee became the president and publisher?
Roy Thomas.
Yes. What is the name of the artist who produced the pictures for Spider-Man's first outing in 1962?
Steve Ditko.
Yep. A 1982 Jim Starlin story was the first graphic novel produced by Marvel Comics. It's entitled The Death of...
Captain Marvel.
Yes. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the Tales of Asgard stories that feature the Norse gods Thor, Odin and Loki. These stories made their debut in the early 60s in which comic book series?
Journey into Mystery.
Yes. What was the name of the veteran pulp fiction illustrator who was commissioned by Martin Goodman to provide the cover artwork for Marvel Comics #1?
Joe Sinnott.
Frank R. Paul. Which member of the X-Men was married to T'Challa, the king of Wakanda, better known as Black Panther? T'Challa later annulled their marriage.
Storm.
Yes. How are Chase Stein and Gertrude Yorks, along with other children, collectively known in the title of a series that began in 2003? The children's parents are members of a supervillain organization called The Pride.
The Runaways.
Yep. Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson are two characters who have taken on the role of which superhero?
Captain America.
Yep. What is the name of the supervillain team assembled by Dr. Octopus to try to defeat Spider-Man? Its original members include Vulture, Kraven and Mysterio.
Sinister Six.
Yes. Wolverine, created by the writer Len Wein and the artist John Romita, became one of Marvel's leading characters and was awarded his own title in 1988. He made his first appearance in October 1974. In which series?
The Incredible Hulk.
Yes. Which character, created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne in the late 1970s, became one of the first openly gay superheroes in American comic books? He married his husband, Kyle Janadu, in 2012's astonishing X-Men #51.
Quicksilver.
North Star. You have no passes, Max, so you've scored 10 points. And our next contender, please. And your name is?
Krithika Varagor,
Your occupation?
journalist,
And your chosen subject?
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
The only person to be elected American president 4 times. Here we go, 2 minutes, starting now. What term was used to refer to Roosevelt's informal addresses to the nation by radio? He first used the medium to communicate directly to the electorate in 1929 when he was governor of New York.
Fireside chats.
Yeah, what was the name of the uncle who gave Eleanor Roosevelt away at her wedding to Franklin? He was also a distant cousin of Franklin.
Elliot.
Theodore. What was the name of Eleanor's secretary with whom Roosevelt began an affair in the 1910s? It's been reported that Eleanor threatened to leave him over it.
Lucy Mercer.
Yep. An American president whose campaign Roosevelt's father had contributed to told a 5-year-old Franklin that he hoped the boy would never be president of the United States. Which president said that to him?
Warren Harding.
Grover Cleveland. At Harvard, Roosevelt was rejected as a member of a prestigious club at the university and recalled the rejection as the greatest disappointment of my life. What's the name of the club?
Porcellian.
Yeah. The Democratic Party chose Roosevelt as its vice presidential nominee for the 1920 election. Who was the Democrats' presidential nominee?
James Cox.
Yeah. What was the name of the country resort in Georgia where Roosevelt hoped that the thermal waters would help to cure his disabilities caused by polio? He bought the resort from the banker George Peabody in 1926.
Warm Springs.
Yes. Whom did Roosevelt choose as his running mate for the 1932 election? He'd stood against him for the presidential nomination.
Garner.
Yes. Who became the first woman to serve in a cabinet position when Roosevelt appointed her as Secretary for Labor after his 1932 election? She'd previously worked for him when he was governor of New York.
Francis Perkins.
Yes. A scientist famously sent a letter to Roosevelt in 1939 in which he warned of the dangers of a nuclear bomb and the fact that Germany was already at work on one. Which scientist?
Einstein.
Yes. The first meeting between the so-called Big Three, namely Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin, began in November 1943. What name is given to this conference after the city in which the discussions were held?
Tehran Conference.
Yes. For his third term, Roosevelt replaced John Garner as his vice president. What was the name of his successor in that role?
Wallace.
Yes. In a 1944 campaign speech, Roosevelt joked that his dog had been the subject of Republican attacks and said that he thought he had the right to object to libelous statements about his pet. What was the name of the dog?
Fala.
It was indeed. No passes. Krithika, you have 11 points. And our final contender, please. And your name is?
Kate Ritchie,
Your occupation?
retired physician.
And your specialist subject?
F.E. McWilliam,
McWilliam, the 20th century sculptor from Northern Ireland, known for his surreal depictions of the human body. 2 minutes starting now. In which town in County Down did the F.E. McWilliam Gallery and Studio open in 2008? He'd been born in the town almost a century earlier.
Banbridge.
Yep. Which art school in London did he go to as a student from 1928 to 1931 and return to as a teacher of sculpture from 1947 to 66?
Slade.
Yep. What was the name of Slade Professor of Fine Art who infuriated the student McWilliam with his dismissal of Cézanne? He's quoted as saying to McWilliam, "Forget about that man, couldn't draw."
Tonks.
Yep. At which RAF station in Buckinghamshire was McWilliam engaged in aerial photographic intelligence during the Second World War?
Medmenham.
Yep. Which international exhibition held at the New Burlington Galleries in London in 1936 greatly influenced McWilliam and led him to change artistic direction?
Surrealist.
Yes. What is the title of his large figurative work which was commissioned for the Festival of Britain in 1951?
Four Seasons.
Yep. Which architect and art collector commissioned McWilliam's Princess Marcia sculpture for the new Altnagelvin Hospital in Derry, Londonderry in 1957?
Eugene Rosenberg.
Correct. What is the title of the sculpture submitted by McWilliam for the Unknown Political Prisoner exhibition of 1953? It was also the first of his works to be bought by the Tate Gallery.
Cain and Abel.
Yep. What artistic method that uses coloured materials did he start to use after a visit to Mexico in 1966? Notably on the 1967 work, Head of Picasso, where the materials were attached to fiberglass.
Mosaic.
Yes. What general name is given to his series of highly polished spherical bronze sculptures made in the mid-60s? The series was inspired by the shape of the coco de mer, or double coconut.
The Beam series.
Yes. In 1964, which friend and associate of the British surrealist published a comprehensive study of his work, describing him as an inventor of styles?
Pass.
What is the name of the series of bronze sculptures created by McWilliam in 1972 and 73 in response to the bombing of the Abercorn tea rooms in Northern Ireland during the Troubles?
Women of Belfast.
Is correct. You had just one pass. In 1964, that friend who described him as an inventor of styles was Sir Rowland Penrose. You have, Kate, 11 points. Well, a very close round there. Let's have a look at all of those scores. In fourth place with 10 points, Max. Tied for first place, 11 points apiece, Giles, Krithika and Kate. So it is the general knowledge round now, and if there is a tie at the end of it, which there very well might be, then the number of passes is taken into account, and the person with the fewer passes is the winner. And if they're tied on passes as well, then there has to be a tie break. So let's get on with it. Ask Max to join us again, please. And you start out with 10, Max, and you have 2.5 minutes for general knowledge. Here we go. Which character in a well-known nursery rhyme takes a tumble and can't be reassembled in spite of the best efforts of all the king's horses and all the king's men?
Humpty Dumpty.
Yes. What word used in ancient Rome for a court of justice and place of public assembly comes from the Greek for royal?
Forum.
Basilica. Which American city has the nicknames Crescent City and the Big Easy?
Seattle.
New Orleans. What large wading bird known for its long, down-curved bill, brown plumage and distinctive call features in the Anglo-Saxon poem The Seafarer?
The albatross.
The curlew. What common class of anti-allergen medication, which includes cetirizine and loratadine, works primarily by inhibiting the action of a chemical involved in itching and inflammation?
Antihistamine.
Yes. Who was the Danish King of England from 1016? He also ruled Denmark from 1019 and Norway from 1028 till he died in 1035.
Harold.
King Canute. Up the Bracket was the 2002 debut album by a British rock band that was formed by Pete Doherty and Carl Barat. Which band?
The Libertines.
Yes. A museum dedicated to the artist Albrecht Dürer was opened in 1871 in the house where he lived and worked from 1509 until his death in 1528. In which German city?
Hamburg.
Nuremberg. What name of French origin is given to the small, almost seedless citrus fruit that is a cross between a mandarin and a Seville orange?
Nectarine.
Clementine. What building at the opposite end of the Royal Mile to Edinburgh Castle is the official residence of the British monarch in Scotland?
Pass.
Titan and Rhea are the two largest moons of which planet?
Jupiter.
Saturn. Which Shakespeare play has the subtitle What You Will?
Much Ado About Nothing.
Twelfth Night. In 1858, in which city did Charles Halley found the symphony orchestra named after him?
Paris.
Manchester. What toy consists of two or more mirrors inside a cylinder together with pieces of coloured glass that produce changing symmetrical patterns when the device is rotated? It was patented in 1817 by the Scottish physicist Sir David Brewster.
Kaleidoscope.
Yep. In Greek mythology, who captured the Amazon princess Antiope and had a son with her named Hippolytus?
Hercules.
Theseus. Which then member of the EastEnders cast had a UK hit single in August 1986 with Anyone Can Fall in Love, a vocal version of the show's theme tune?
Pass.
Which political campaigner and former cleric served as General Secretary and later Chairman of the anti-nuclear organisation CND between 1980 and 1990?
Gordon Brown.
Well, it's possible, but I
Yeah,
think
but
unlikely. Bruce Kent is the answer to that question. You had two passes, Max. Anita Dobson was in the EastEnders cast. They have that UK hit single. And the Queen spends her time, quite a lot of it anyway, in Holyrood House. You have, Max, a total of 14 points. And now Giles again, please. And you start out with 11 points. See how you do with your general knowledge. Here we go. Which celebrated road stretches for 22 miles from Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles to the Pacific Coast Highway?
Pass.
In the television series Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, which actress plays Frank Spencer's long-suffering wife, Betty?
Michel Doutrice.
Yes. Which Flemish painter has a type of broad lace collar and a style of short, pointed beard named after him? He was knighted by Charles I in 1632.
Van Dyck.
Yep. Which 1888 operetta by Gilbert and Sullivan is set in the Tower of London?
The Yeoman of the Guard.
Yes. What word for a traitor who collaborates with an invader comes from the surname of a Norwegian prime minister during the Second World War?
Quisling.
Correct. Which American executive was appointed as Facebook's chief operating officer in 2008, went on to become the first woman to sit on its board of directors? She wrote the 2013 book Lean In, Women, Work and the Will to Lead.
Sheryl Sandberg.
Yes. Which volcanic rock with a name derived from the Greek for touchstone sometimes forms in pillar or column-like structures, such as those at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland?
Tufa.
Basalt. English Bob, Quick Mike and Little Bill Daggett are characters in a 1992 Western directed by and starring Clint Eastwood. What film?
Unforgiven.
Yes. Which author wrote the 1994 novel Captain Corelli's Mandolin, set on the Greek island of Kefalonia during the Second World War?
Nicholas Montserrat.
Louis de Bernier. Which constellation gets its name from the Latin word for swan?
Cygnus.
Yes. Which statesman, who played a leading role in the formation of Germany's Christian Democratic Union after the Second World War, was the first Chancellor of West Germany from 1949 to 63?
Willy Brandt.
Konrad Adenauer. La Donna e Mobile is an aria at the beginning of the final act of an opera by Verdi. Which opera?
The Marriage of Figaro.
Rigoletto. At which royal residence did King George VI die in 1952? He'd been born in 1895 at a smaller house nearby.
Chatsworth.
Sandringham. The Niagara Falls are on the border between the US state of New York and which province of Canada?
Ontario.
Yes. In which Winter Olympic sport do a team of 2 or 4 people, that includes a driver and a brakeman, steer a partially enclosed vehicle down an ice track?
Bobsleigh.
Yes. What word for a large, luxurious car comes from the French word for a type of cloak?
Sedan.
Limousine. A type of fine porcelain is named after a cathedral city on the River Severn, where it was made from the 1750s until the closure of its last remaining factory in 2009. Which city?
Worcester.
Is correct. You had just one pass. That celebrated road, 22 miles of it, Sunset Boulevard. But you've got a total now, Giles, of 21 points. And now Kritika again, please. And you start out with 11 points as well. 21 points is the score to beat. Let's see how you do with your 2.5 minutes of general knowledge, starting now. Which organs of the human body are directly affected by cataracts?
Eyes.
Yep. In Roman numerals, which single-digit number is denoted by the letter V?
5.
Yep. Which snooker player won the 2019 Players' Championship in the finally completed record 1,000th century break?
Andre Agassi.
Ronnie O'Sullivan. Leonardo DiCaprio was nominated 6 times for an Oscar before he won the Best Actor award in 2016. For what film?
The Revenant.
Yep. Which humorous British artist, born in 1872, was known for his illustrations of absurdly impractical contraptions? His name is now used to describe designs or constructions that appear ridiculously overcomplicated.
Escher.
Heath Robinson. The Thiepval Memorial in France commemorates missing soldiers who died in a major battle of the First World War. Which battle?
The Somme.
Yes. Which James Joyce work was published as a novel in 1939 after the author had worked on it for more than 15 years? It's said to be one of the most complex works of 20th century English language fiction.
Finnegan's Wake.
Yes. Which eminent Russian dancer provided the choreography for Stravinsky's 1913 ballet, The Rite of Spring?
Nuria.
Nijinsky. What's the surname of the 2 French brothers born in the 1850s who gave their name to a company that pioneered the manufacture of pneumatic tyres and is also well known for its travel guides and road maps?
Moe and Shando.
Michelin. In the context of radio waves, the abbreviation AM refers to the variation or modulation of a particular property of a carrier wave. What property?
Frequency.
Amplitude. What word that translates from Italian as revenge is used in English for a prolonged and bitter campaign against someone or something?
Vendetta.
Yes. What food additive is identified by the European Union as E160B? One of its uses is to give an orange colour to cheeses such as Red Leicester.
Red dye.
Annatto. The dark blue properties on a standard London Monopoly board are Park Lane and which other?
Manor House.
Mayfair. What institution was founded by the financier Sir Thomas Gresham in the 1560s to provide a convenient meeting place for merchants and bankers?
A bank.
The Royal Exchange. In the television sitcom The Good Life, Tom and Barbara Good's next-door neighbours are called Margot and Jerry. What's their surname?
Smith.
Ledbetter. What word for a person who is pessimistic or complains continually is also the name of a biblical prophet? He was the son of Hilkiah.
Ezekiel.
Jeremiah. A daily ceremony known as setting the watch, which dates back to the late 9th century, involves the sounding of a horn at 9 o'clock each evening and takes place in the market square of a small cathedral city near York. Which city?
Durham.
No, it is Ripon. No passes. You have a total now of 17 points. And finally, Kate, please. And you also start out, Kate, with 11 points. The score to beat, as you will know, is 21. So, here we go. Who succeeded Carol Vorderman as a co-presenter on the television game show Countdown in 2009?
Rachel Riley.
Yep. Which 1943 musical by Rodgers and Hammerstein featured the song Oh, What a Beautiful Morning and People Will Say We're in Love? It was adapted into a film 1955.
Oklahoma.
Yep. The defensive fortifications constructed in France before the Second World War to repel a potential invasion by Germany were named after a French statesman. What was his name?
Pass.
In construction, what name's given to a slot or recess, usually rectangular, cut into a piece of wood or stone to receive a matching projection called a tenon?
Mortise.
Yes. In the context of an academic qualification, the abbreviation PhD stands for Doctor of...
Philosophy.
Yep. Which Canadian ice hockey player is widely regarded as the greatest in the history of the National Hockey League? On his retirement in 1999, the league retired his 99 shirt number.
Pass.
Esox lucius is the scientific name of which voracious freshwater fish?
Perch.
Pike. Which singer received posthumous Brit Award nominations in the British Female Solo Artist category in 2013 and 16? She had died in 2011, but was eligible for nominations because of compilation albums released after her death.
Amy Winehouse.
Yes, the PSA blood test is taken by men to detect potential problems in which gland?
Prostate.
Yep. What 1971 film starred Gene Hackman as the New York detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle? His performance earned him an Oscar for Best Actor.
French Connection.
Yep. Which American Financial Services Company was formed in 1852, initially to ship gold dust and bullion from California to the country's east coast. The company's name comprises the surnames of its founders, Henry and William.
Wells Fargo.
Yes, what name that means assembly was given to the lower house of the Russian Parliament from 1906 to 1917 and was revived for the lower house of the Russian Federation in 1993.
Duma.
Yep. The Boeing 787 passenger aircraft is officially known by what name? It was chosen after an online public vote.
Dreamliner.
Yeah, a law that proposes that work expands to fill the time available for its completion is named after a writer, historian and economist. What was his name?
Murphy.
Parkinson. In 2015, the National Lottery increased the number of balls used in the main UK lotto draw from 49 to
60.
59. Pluto is one of millions of astronomical objects within a circular region of our solar system named after a Dutch-American astronomer. What region?
Kuiper Belt.
Yes, Mark Billingham's 2001 novel, I'll start, it's all finished, Sleepyhead, features the first appearance of a detective who is played in a television adaptation by David Morrissey. Which detective?
Morse.
Nope, it was Thorne, Tom Thorne. You had 2 passes, and they were the Canadian ice hockey player, the greatest of all time was Wayne Gretzky, and those fortifications advanced the Maginot Line. So it was André Maginot behind the Great Line. You have now, Kate, a total of 22 points. Well, how close was that? Let's have a look at the final scores. In 4th place with 14 points, Max. 3rd place, 17 points, Kritika. 2nd place with 21 points, Giles. 1st place, 22 points, Kate. And that means, of course, that Kate goes through to the semi-finals. Congratulations to her. And if you'd like to be a contender in the next series, do go to our website, bbc.co.uk/mastermind, and you can follow us at Mastermind Quiz. And do join us again next time for more Masterminds. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Friends and family will be proud of getting through. They all know that I have thought about going on Mastermind for some time, and they'll probably be a bit surprised that I've left it so late in my quiz career to do this. I really didn't think I would get through because these people are all excellent quizzers. There's no doubt it gets harder to answer these questions as you get older. On the one hand, you've more knowledge. On the other hand, it's harder to get it out quickly. So I would be very pleased if I was to win it.